Okay, welcome everybody to ANC3C's April regular meeting. We are getting started. We've got a good agenda tonight. Rachel, could you get started and let us know if we have quorum, and then verify notice?
We have quorum and notice was sent to the listservs and posted on the website.
Great. Okay, and I'm going to post the agenda in the chat so we can have, so everybody can take a look. But before we adopt the agenda, I do have a proposal to amend it slightly, and that is to remove item number 6, which is consideration of a resolution on water pipe replacement, and add at the beginning of the meeting a brief presentation from Laura Zeilinger regarding the DC budget that's ongoing right now. So is that amenable to fellow commissioners? Great. Thank you. And by approving the agenda, we also approve the 2 items on the consent calendar.
Can I make another amendment, Chair?
Sure, of course, or Commissioner Siddiqui, sorry.
I would like to propose that we move number 4, consideration of a resolution supporting funding for the renovation and modernization of Hardy Middle School, and number 5, consideration of a resolution requesting the standardization and modernization of ANSI equipment and technological services to the consent calendar as well.
Is there any objection, commissioners?
I don't object, but I had a couple of questions about the Hardy Middle School resolution. Not in a critical sense, but in potentially an improvement. But I can waive that. It had to do with the years that you wanted the capital budget to be dedicated to funding of improvements, because typically with modernizations of schools, it's a multi-year project. So I thought it would improve the resolution if you at least had a beginning year noted, because there'll be planning period first. Okay. And all of that gets budgeted with the capital budget.
What year would you suggest? I'm going to take some notes so I can email it to us.
Well, in reading the resolution, I gathered this is borderline emergency and needs to really get going. So I would say to put planning for FY23.
Okay, and where would you put that in the first resolve? Or
in the resolve.
Okay. I accept that as a friendly amendment, and so that is the resolution that's being incorporated in the consent calendar unless there are objections.
Yeah.
Okay, no objections. That is great. And thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui, for streamlining our evening. And I'll pull up the agenda again. Okay. So thank you very much. All those in, are there any objections to the agenda as amended by Commissioner Siddiqui and McWood and myself? Great. Okay, it is adopted. Thank you. Now we move on to announcements. Commissioners, are there any announcements you'd like to make?
Yes, I'd like to. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Pagets?
That the Community Engagement and Grants Committee will meet next Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're hoping to have the Ward 3 mutual aid folks be able to present a draft of their request.
And that meeting's open to the public, Commissioner Pagets?
Yes, and anybody can feel free to add other grant requests to it too, and it's encouraged and open to the public.
And no decisions are made there. It's just a
no.
Okay.
No decisions are made there. Sorry, I forgot what else this is. It'll be posted to everywhere we give notice tomorrow.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Siddiqui?
So I'm not sure if this is the right avenue or if you want me to wait till community forum, but I would like to bring up the legality of placing signs that we received an email about.
You can just go ahead and do that now.
Okay, so we received an email from a constituent that was worried about the legality of signs being placed. So the constituent actually pointed out that the signs, these aren't necessarily the signs for the political campaigns or DDOT, but other signs that community and any community group might be interested in that they've been placing. I think the rule applies to all of these. And so the rule is that on public space, all these signs are protected by the First Amendment, but the tree box space in front of someone's property, while technically part of DDOT's right-of-way for work purposes, is generally treated as the responsibility of the homeowner. So since the homeowner is expected to clean the snow and lives in the area, they can make changements to the pavement in the tree box area. So that's the rule over there. So if you're a homeowner and you see a sign placed in front of the tree box of your property, you are, you're welcome to have a conversation with the group that placed it there, and you're also allowed to remove it if you need to as well. I'm trying to see if the constituent who proposed it, they are not here right now, but I have conveyed sort of this that was conveyed to us. I don't know if commissioners have anything else to add.
No, but I'd like to thank Amir from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations for helping track down the answer to that question today. He did so very quickly. So thank you. Commissioners, any other announcements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the community forum. And this is where members of the public are invited to ask questions, bring up issues, and make announcements. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak. It's under the reaction. Okay, I see Ms. Sclafani. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Chair Finley, can you clarify this is related to stuff that's not on the agenda already?
That is correct. Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. So this is for things that are not currently on our agenda, and I will again post our agenda in the chat. I'll link to it.
Thank you. Then I will await after you get to the agenda item of 3801 Macomb. Thank
Sounds
you,
good.
Commissioners.
Thank you.
Speak with you later.
That's a really good point, Ms. Sclafani. When we get to 3801, all those who emailed us asking to speak, it's okay. You don't have to email us in advance to ask to speak at our meetings. And we're glad to have you and hear you this evening. And
Thank you.
Mr. Frazier, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Oops, sorry. Try it again.
I just wanted to say hello. This is my first meeting. We are the owners of 3244 38th Street, so the house on the corner. Just hi to everyone.
Hello, welcome. Seeing lots of friendly faces wave back. This is great. Okay, so the first order of commission business, we'll move on to our, if everybody is done in community forum. Everybody seems to be done. I don't see no hands raised. So the first order of commission business is the announcement of the election for replacement commissioner for 3C08. Commissioner Gersten resigned, and we will be hosting an election with the Office of ANCs on April 23rd at the Cleveland Park Library from noon until 4 p.m. Residents of 3C08 are invited to come and cast their votes during that time. Please bring a photo ID with you to show the Office of ANCs that you live in 3C08 so that you may cast a vote. There are two people running, Jocelyn Dyer and Martin Kleinbard. I hope I'm pronouncing both their names right, but they are the candidates. And if you're a 3C08 resident, please come out this Saturday. Any questions on that? Okay, great. Moving right along. We'll be moving to consideration of a public space permit application for 3005 Normstone Drive to waive the 42-inch height fence limit to repair existing non-compliant fence and to permit parking on a driveway past the building restriction line. And Commissioner McWood, did you want to move that?
I just have a question first.
Sure.
Director Zeilinger is here. Is she doing her presentation first?
You are absolutely right. I did amend the agenda to include Director Zeilinger. Thank you, Director Zeilinger. And thank you, Commissioner McWood. Director Zeilinger, could you please give us your wonderful presentation?
Sure, and thank you. Nice to see you. Many of you who I know and have been talking with over the years, and thank you, Commissioner McWood, for remembering that I was here. I'm really pleased to be here today on behalf of Mayor Bowser to just share some highlights from her fiscal year 23 budget proposal with this ANC. I'm joined today by my Chief of Staff, David Ross, who I think will be advancing the deck, or perhaps Amir will, I'm not exactly sure, but there's a visual so you don't just have to look at me talking. but I am, while we're figuring out the technology of sharing a deck, I'll just go ahead and jump right in the interest of time, if that works for you and for the residents who are listening. So again, I'm Laura Zeilinger. I'm the Director of the Department of Human Services for Mayor Bowser. And I am very pleased to speak about her Fair Shot budget for fiscal year 23. The budget reflects a lot of things that we've been hearing from district residents, concerns about public safety and affordability, ways that we fund strategies that better ensure all residents have access to safe and dignified housing, and about how we make our roads safer and continue to rethink how we use public space and commercial corridors. The mayor's budget makes big investments in our young people through our schools and facilities, but also through significant investments in early learning and out of school time activities. The Mayor Bowser's $19.5 billion budget, there we go, is the most equitable budget in the history of the District of Columbia. We have a lot to be proud of when it comes to our work around giving more DC residents a fair shot, which is why she titled this her Fair Shot budget. In the past several months, thanks to Mayor Bowser's leadership, I wanted to share a few things that we've been able to do that we're particularly excited about. We've broken ground on a new hospital on the St. Elizabeth's campus in Ward 8 to address health inequities, and opened at the same campus a new shelter that replaces our old 801 East Men's Shelter to better support men who are experiencing homelessness. We launched a pilot to give new and expectant moms in wards 5, 7, and 8 direct cash assistance of $900 a month. We celebrated the groundbreaking of a new grocery store in Ward 7 at Skyland. And we cut the ribbon on a new Good Foods Markets in Ward 8 and celebrated new tech jobs at the intersection of Martin Luther King Avenue and Good Hope Road. We've witnessed the progress at our DC Infrastructure Academy, which Mayor Bowser created to make sure DC residents have a fair shot at good paying jobs in infrastructure. And since we opened in 2018, more than 1,900 DC residents have been trained for careers in high demand infrastructure industries. And when you look back even beyond the past few months, there's even more we should celebrate. This is something that I think I've had many conversations with about this community, and you've been a part of with us, which is in the last 6 years, we've driven down family homelessness by 73% and produced the blueprint that is allowing us to transform our single adult homeless services system. We have also transformed in many ways our public education system over the last 15 years because of taxpayer investments, mayoral accountability, and council oversight. And today, DC has one of the lowest uninsured rates in the nation because of our work together. And the diversity of our small businesses and the recognition we have received as a top city for Black women entrepreneurs. So when Mayor Bowser says that this is the most equitable budget in the history of Washington, DC, she says that because with this budget and with this $19.5 billion, she intends to accomplish the following major objectives. The first is one that we've heard a lot about, which is public safety. For example, we laid the path to get MPD back up to having 4,000 officers. And this year we fund the hiring of 347 new officers. There's $30 million for hiring, recruitment, and retention incentives to put the district back on the path to 4,000 officers at MPD. $1.7 million to provide 23 personnel to support high quality care coordination, including life coaches to provide critical violence intervention services for individuals who are at risk. $1.1 million for a pilot program that provides 5 years in rental assistance and matched savings for those at risk of violence. $6 million to support violence prevention and diversion among at-risk non-incarcerated youth, including $350,000 for dedicated bilingual credible messengers and $3.9 million for expanded out of school time programming. There are grants for victims of sexual assault and other victim services in crisis intervention, advocacy, and trauma-informed mental health supports, as well as $26 million to replace fire and EMS response vehicles, including ambulances and ladder trucks. Moving on to the area of health and human services and ending chronic homelessness. This year, the mayor proposes using $31 million towards our efforts to end chronic homelessness for an additional 500 single adults and 260 families. This is following year-over-year reductions in chronic homelessness, and again, really building on the success we've had at making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring for families. These investments are adding supportive housing vouchers for individuals and families and youth, particularly youth who are aging out of our youth system, as well as outreach and prevention services, so that when people experience a housing crisis, they're less likely for that crisis to end up in chronic homelessness. We're also adding $11.5 million to retain direct support professionals who care for our most vulnerable residents by raising wages over a 3-year period, and $4.5 million to expand school nursing services at additional school health service programs in public and charter schools. There's also, I'm not going to read out all the investments, but there are additional investments to extend enrollment in Alliance for 12 months, which is right now a 6-month recertification period. There are major capital investments. So this community remembers the work we did to build the Brooks in Ward 3. And similarly, we're renovating and replacing many of our single adult shelters and our places where we provide the emergency services for people in our single adult system. A major capital investment there, $114.6 million. In addition, we're replacing our DC animal shelter, $750,000 to enforce a new ban on flavored tobacco sales, as well as expanded eligibility for individuals with developmental disabilities and to provide those same services as individuals with intellectual disabilities. There are also exciting investments for seniors, including for $500,000 for free dental services, as well as greater connection through access to technology and wellness by distributing personal tablets, and $1 million to increase the Connector Card program, as well as resources for nutrition support through grocery card distribution for eligible seniors. Moving now on to education. With $2.2 billion in the education budget, we can address the immediate pandemic-related needs of our students in DC public school families, so they can have a strong equity-based budget model that ensures at-risk students who need the most are getting the most. Additionally, we'll continue to make progress in adding more high-quality childcare seats across the city with another round of access to quality grants and $68 million to add more than 500 infant and toddler seats in our DCPS portfolio. And for our older learners, we added $900,000 to UDC budget to retain a strong teaching staff and increase the capital budget by over $18 million to support their renovations. I'm going to list out some specific improvement for Ward 3 investments in the area of education, or that fall within the education cluster. Those include $24 million for the renovation of the Chevy Chase Library, $23 million for the final year of construction for Foxhall School, $22 million for the renovation of Deal Middle School, $21 million toward the expansion of Stoddart Elementary School, $45 million to renovate the MacArthur Boulevard School to serve high school students, and $71 million for the relocation of the DC Archives to a new site in Ward 3. There is also a 5.87% increase in the base amount of the Uniform Per Student Funding Formula, and $18 million to provide stability to schools through the Pandemic Supplement Fund. There are major capital renovations to replace aging HVAC and boilers in schools, investments in the preventative maintenance of our schools, as well as $3.8 million to safeguard student mental health through additional supports through school-based mental health programs, something that any of us who are parents with kids who've been making these transitions through COVID know is incredibly important. We also have $35 million to stand up a community-based program at the Winston Education Campus with a state-of-the-art laboratory for hands-on learning. For citywide, a new indoor sports complex at the RFK campus. The mayor's capital plan will turn the RFK campus into the premier destination for training, learning clubs, tournaments, and competitions. The complex will accommodate multiple new amenities for DC residents, such as a gymnastics training facility, indoor track, climbing walls, and boxing. I'm not going to list all of the many investments, but those are just some of the very exciting highlights. Additional community investments overall outside of the RFK campus. There is $18 million for the renovation of Chevy Chase Community Center here in Ward 3. There's also $5 million to extend out of school time grant opportunities and preserve continuity for our youth. We also added $3.9 million to expand out of school time recreation programs provided by DPR and community-based organizations focused on athletics, visual arts, performing arts, esports, culinary arts, and more, as well as $6.4 million to continue the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program, which provides excellent opportunities for some of our older youth to engage in some learning and work experience activities over the summer. So a lot of this adds up to, in addition to the summer youth, there are 10,000 more summer camp slots and 1,000 more participants at Camp Riverview. We have 1,400 more learn to swim slots and restored Sunday pool service in select centers. 330 more slots for Tiny Tots tennis, more gymnastics, so a whole host of new activities in the recreation department, including 300 more participants for Senior Olympics. And I'm going to talk briefly about transportation, a number of projects particularly of interest here in Ward 3, $23.5 million to continue historic investment to bring Ward 3 streets into a state of good repair. $114 million toward rehabilitating and reconstructing and maintaining our sidewalks citywide. $102 million to continue the work on alleys, bringing them to good repair through maintenance and reconstruction. $5.9 million to complete the Arizona Avenue connection to the Capitol Crescent Trail. $2.2 million to begin the rehab of the pedestrian bridge over Arizona Avenue Northwest. $19 million for phase 1 of the Canal Road Northwest stabilization project, new bike lanes on Connecticut Avenue, streetscapes and drainage improvements along Connecticut Avenue and Cleveland Park, $7.8 million for new streetscaping on Macomb Northwest between Ross Place and Connecticut Avenue, and $10 million for the rehabilitation of Broad Branch Road. Citywide, there's a number of measures for replacing temporary traffic calming measures with permanent ones, and as well as for more streetscaping, bike lanes, pedestrian safety, and crossing guards. So those are some of the key highlights in the mayor's budget. We're very excited about all of the ways that the budget proposes to meet the diverse needs of residents, and wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to hear about what the mayor is proposing. I can answer questions if you would like related more specifically probably to the human services area. I'm joined by Amir on the who you know as your Ward 3 MOCR, who could probably speak also more broadly to other Ward 3 specific concerns if you have any. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Director Zeilinger. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the director? Commissioner McWood?
Thank you, Director Zeilinger. I appreciate you being here tonight. Can you provide us with both the slide deck, but also the specific information you had for Ward 3 that I don't think was included in the slide deck?
Absolutely, happy to. And I think we might also be able to just post it as well in the chat because we have it in a one-pager. So happy to do both.
That would be great. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, and this is in your area, $500 million is going to be allocated to the Housing Production Trust Fund. There's $9 million that is going to be added to project and sponsor-based vouchers. There's no increase in tenant-based vouchers. And I wanted to get your sense if the budgeting for the voucher program, local vouchers, is going to be sufficient to operate all the new housing that potentially, I mean, there's a lot of housing that's going to be coming online, in addition to new housing that is going to be produced. Is that going to be enough to support the operation of all those new units?
Commissioner McWood, it's a great question. It's one that is actually not squarely in my area. It would be really the
Housing Authority, right?
Of DHCD and the Housing Authority, but I can speak to it somewhat. So I can speak to some of what my experience has been about how that generally works. So depending on how heavily subsidized the capital construction is, some of the affordable units that are produced through the Housing Production Trust Fund will not require the same deep subsidy because they will not have as much debt. And so but they certainly will need, as they put in their applications for that funding, be able to show how the financing will work. And the other thing is the budget office, I think different from in prior years, rather than allocate the vouchers in the years in which buildings are under construction before they will be spent, because it might be the construction of new housing may be in the fiscal year 23 budget, but that housing will not come online till 24 or 25. Historically, in order to show that the funding would be there when the projects came online, those funds were appropriated but not spent for 2 years. We were able to finally, through some, I think, legislative authority and different way of budgeting, able to do that budgeting in the out years so that the funding will be there when it comes online, but we won't be budgeting and allocating those funds that can't be spent until before the buildings are built. So there was intentionality in the way those things are looked at. And so while I am speaking somewhat out of school on this issue, since it is not my direct area, and happy to, I think Amir would be the right person to follow up and confirm whether I gave you accurate information. I'm fairly confident that that we're in good shape as it relates to the way the budgeting worked.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Reba.
Thank you. I am having a little bit of an audio issue tonight. So on my end, things are breaking up, but Director, thank you for being here this evening. Always good to see you and certainly appreciate your report this evening. I may have missed it. I know there were some things that you covered that were not part of the slide deck. So I appreciate Commissioner McWood's request to have a copy of that so we could follow it a little better and see some of the details that you outlined. My question is regarding wraparound services for those placed in environments with vouchers. As I know you know, there's been a number of issues along the Connecticut Avenue corridor with MPD and various issues. And what's really lacking are those wraparound services to make sure that people can be successful and have the tools and resources to live independent along with an environment that they've been placed in. Unless I missed it because my audio cut out, I didn't hear anything regarding wraparound services and addressing these needs that we're all fully aware of and need to acknowledge.
Sure, I'm so glad you asked the question. So the $31 million for Homeward DC funds, at the same time it funds a housing subsidy, also funds the supportive services, those wraparound case management services that match to subsidies for individuals who are exiting homelessness. We are able, that one of the exciting developments starting late this fiscal year, and that we'll see in 23 is that we very recently, in the last a month or so, secured a state plan amendment to our Medicaid state plan that will allow the district to leverage more federal funds, more Medicaid funds for the supportive services in our permanent supportive housing program, which will also just mean that we've got more federal resources that are going to pay for the services. And it also, I think, will help with the care coordination, some of the standardization of those services. So we have an RFP actually that we released last week where we're procuring for the new supportive service contracts that will serve people in housing as they're moving in, that will also leverage Medicaid funding to help pay for that.
I thank you for that answer. I do have a brief follow-up, because one of the concerns amongst many, including in government, is the evaluation before these individuals are placed to ensure that there are no competing issues with other residents. So case in point, if I had an issue that someone else had an issue and we all had the same challenges to be successful in the environment we're being placed, is there any qualification or insurance that these individuals aren't being placed up against one another? I hope I'm making myself clear. I mean, it would, trying to be mindful, respectful of our clients and of our neighbors. But there has been a discussion when two neighbors have the same challenges, there tends to be issues with them within the same environment. So is there any pre-evaluation to make sure that that doesn't occur? Am I making sense?
I do understand the question you're trying to ask me. And so when I think there are a couple of things that are really important to understand. When people have a tenant-based voucher, it's like that is a resource that they have qualified for based on their eligibility for that program. And instead, I would think about it like the same as if they had a rich uncle who was paying their rent. And if someone has a rich uncle who's paying their rent, nobody gets to tell them where to live. If they're secure a lease, they secure a lease on the private market like anybody else. And we don't place people. They have a voucher, not a rich uncle, but they have a voucher that they qualified for based on their specific condition, and they have choice about where to live. And if where they end up choosing to live turns out not to be a good fit for them, then they can negotiate their lease with their landlord. And it may be that sometimes they will opt to and work with their case manager around creating a transition plan somewhere else. But we don't tell people where they're allowed to live or not live because they receive a housing subsidy. In fact, that would be a violation of our fair housing laws if we did that.
Understood. Thank you for that answer. And thank you again, Director, for being here this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Frazier?
Yes, thank you so much for all the information. It's so helpful. I have two questions, one about homelessness and one about education. I was curious when you mentioned the statistic of 73% reduction in family homelessness. How do you, what is that reduction? What is that benchmark? Is that 73% in a year, which I find very hard to believe? Is that in the mayor's succession of terms? And then how do you really count that? And then the other part of homelessness, what is the reduction, stagnation, or increase in individual and youth homelessness? And then I was very curious to notice in the slide that there are only 10 vouchers for youth homelessness in that slide. Out of millions and millions of dollars, there are 10 vouchers for youth. And I was curious what the reasoning was for that.
Sure.
And then I have an education question follow-up.
Okay, real quick on homelessness. So every year we do a count in January of every individual and family, a young person, anyone experiencing homelessness in Washington, D.C. And we do that count every single year in the third week of January, sheltered, unsheltered, through all of our different service providers. And we publish that data. We look at that over years as trend data. So it's one data point that we look at. We also look at how many people newly experience homelessness over the course of a year. We look at lengths of homelessness. We look at a number of other measures, but this allows us to look at trends. So the reduction in family homelessness is actually since the beginning of the launch of our strategic plan that we've launched under Mayor Bowser called Homeward DC. And it looks at what at homelessness over since 2016, which is our baseline year of that plan. And so back then we had a very different system. We had families in DC General and overflow motels. And as we've reformed our entire system to prevent homelessness more frequently, reduce length of time that families spend in shelter, and help them exit with the resources they need to not return to homelessness, we've seen the number of families at any point in time go down by 73%. So when I came here, we were overflowing, we were in DC General, overflowing into motels in the district and in Maryland. And today we have a fraction of that number of families. At any given time, right now we have less than 200 families in our entire system, which was, we had more families in that DC General alone back then. So we look at this year over year, and we look at this over time. We're getting ready next week to publish our January 2022 pit count data. So I will not get ahead of that while we're still looking at those numbers. But we had seen before what we'll be releasing next week. So stay tuned on that. I will tell you it's very exciting news that we will get to share. We look at single adult homelessness as well by our shelter count and unsheltered. And we were seeing numbers that were pretty flat year over year of the reductions in chronic homelessness, those with the longest lengths of homelessness, and those who also have disabling conditions, because we were seeing as much inflow or more inflow into our system as we were housing people. Other jurisdictions like ours saw pretty significant increases. So while we're not happy to be sort of working this hard and we are holding somewhat flat or seeing pretty minor reductions in the single adult numbers, it helped us know where we need to focus, which is on inflow, as well as continuing our focus on chronic homelessness. So that is where we are with that number and sort of in the methodology and how we measure that. I think I answered.
Yes, it is interesting, and I hope that in the message.
Oh, youth homelessness. I'm sorry. Why 10 vouchers? Do you mind if I?
Yes, please do.
So we have a plan on youth homelessness called Solid Foundations, and we look at our data. Permanent supportive housing, a long-term voucher, is a pretty unusual intervention for a young person. They generally, we're serving them in what we call extended transitional housing, because they're folks who are able-bodied, but for one reason or another, they're needing support from the shelter system, but they're not living on their own independently. They're living, with services in community. Some folks who age out of that system with a disabling condition who are really going to need that long-term support, those are folks we might support with a voucher, but it's a small number every year. Our interventions on youth homelessness tend to be more like transitional housing, and folks are moving through our system and oftentimes going on to college and doing a number of other things that young adults do.
Well, the going back to the point about individual homelessness, I suppose that I would just like that fact remains prominent, that number actually has been stable. And I didn't see that represented in the deck or in the discussion that we had, which I think is absolutely critical to this issue in Washington, that individual homelessness has in fact not gone down. And I think we need to figure out more ways as a city and in the mayor's budget to reflect that change. It seems to me we just keep putting money at a project that is already making improvement, which we need to do that. But I didn't see extensive budget and focus on individual homelessness and affecting the root causes and long-term change in that trend. So for me, that's an area of concern. And then in education, I was curious what the benchmarks are. I didn't see in regard to any of the funding, how we're looking at long-term improvement strategies for students, whether whether that is avoiding youth homelessness, whether that is getting more kids into youth counseling, whether that is increasing the graduation rate. I didn't see any of those sort of statistics. It was just a lot of where the money's going to go. But can you speak to us about what improvements have been made in those rates as far as teacher retention? I mean, we could go through the list of things that really make sure a school succeeds, but I didn't see anywhere on the deck those benchmarks of success stories.
Okay, I'm gonna first answer your last comment because I didn't talk to you. I'm
Chair
sorry.
Finley, can I ask if we can maybe sort of keep this short, because we have very important applications that are there, and maybe it's better if there's an email or a phone number where you can talk about this. I mean, I don't want to cut community questions short, but I also am very wary of time.
Yeah, I'm happy to take those answers offline. I just suppose that the bigger point is that I hope that in future decks we can see some of these things that actually where we see where our funds are going and how those benchmarks are being hit in accordance to what we're supporting or not supporting. That's really the takeaway for me.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you, Director Zeilinger. I think a good thing to do would be folks out there who have questions, you could email us at the ANC and we will forward your questions along, because we also are all very interested in the answers to these questions. I have a couple questions about, our LGBTQ homeless youth, and because about 40% of them of our homeless youth identify as LGBTQ, and we're not funding Casa Ruby. I've got lots of questions about that, and I'd like to follow up with you, Dr. Zeilinger or Director Zeilinger, and as well as Amir, so we can get these answers. So thank you for coming. And,
absolutely. Again, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to answer any question that you have in follow up. So please do forward them, and appreciate the feedback on the deck. I will pass it along to those who prepared those for the meeting.
Great, thank you so much. And I believe Bob Ward had a question. I hope Bob sends that question into the ANC as well, and we can get some answers. So thank you again, and now we'll move on with our meeting. So this is the 3005 Normstone, and I believe it's consideration of a public space permit. I believe Commissioner McWood is going to present in the absence of a commissioner for 3C08.
Correct. This is a public space application at 3005 Normstone Drive. And the application requests a waiver of the 42-inch height fence limit on front yard fences, and also requests a permission to park in front of the building restriction line. I've got a short resolution, but I want to give the applicant, Amy Weinstein, an opportunity to say something first. We did have extensive review of this application at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting earlier this month. But Ms. Weinstein, do you want to unmute?
Yes, may I share screen for a minute?
We need to make you a co-host to do so.
Oh, okay.
But I believe our host can make you a co-host.
All right.
All right, you are a co-host now. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I will endeavor to make this really brief. I know you have quite an agenda tonight. This is the property 3005 Normstone Drive, where I reside with my husband. And we're here tonight to talk about our waiver request from DDOT to essentially do what has been done on this property since 1959. But because we're doing a small one-story addition up at the front of the house, it gives DDOT the ability to review everything and cite us for non-conforming existing conditions. The first one is parking space. This is Normstone Drive here, and this is our driveway that crosses the sidewalk. It also crosses Normstone Creek, which you can't see the water, but it's in this swale. And then it tucks up behind our front garden fence where we park. And that's the first thing I'd like to talk about. And second is we'd like to restore this Japanese style fence back to its original condition. And I'll get into that in a minute too. I think with regard to the parking, well, for both issues, Normstone Drive is a very unusual street in the city. It has a right-of-way of 170 feet. Massachusetts Avenue has a right-of-way of 160 feet. So this is one of the widest public right-of-ways in the city. And on this map, you can see 30th Street right around the corner, which is only 60 feet wide. The reason why Normstone has such a wide public right-of-way is that the Normstone Creek meanders through the valley on its way to Rock Creek, and Normstone Drive crosses that creek on old stone culverts that date back probably to the early 30s. When DDOT received the property from the National Park Service, they wanted this really wide right-of-way so that they could control the entire street as well as the creek and all the bridge crossings over the creek so that they could maintain them. And the site that we're talking about is shown in red right here with the driveway coming off of Normstone Drive here. The site also has a little pipe stem, we call it, that goes out to 30th Street that I'll talk about in a second. So the site, this is a section through the site. Normstone Drive is down here. This is the creek, which runs up against our stone retaining wall, which you saw with the Japanese fence. On top of that, property line is here. And the site actually slopes 30 feet up to our rear property line. So it makes parking on this site really difficult. And in fact, the house is situated on the site. You see it here with only 8-foot side yards, both of which are too steeply sloped to drive on to get to the rear yard. And the pipe stem that is 13 feet wide that comes out to 30th Street is also too steeply sloped to park on. This is the side yard stair, and this is the stair on the pipe stem on 30th Street. So there's no place to park on this property except in this public space here. And cars have been parking there since 1959. So that's our first request. And then the second request is that we get permission to rebuild, excuse me, something's wrong with my photograph, to restore and rebuild this Japanese style fence, which was built in 1964 when a Japanese garden was developed on the property. The ruling that we're asking a waiver from is that a fence on public space cannot be more than 42 inches tall and 50% open. And that's, as I understand, is trying to control things like picket fences right on the back of the sidewalk. They don't want a tall fence right on the back of the sidewalk. In our case, because there's so much distance from the back of the sidewalk to where the fence is, that's one of the reasons that we're basing our request on. This is, to do this very quickly, here's Normstone Drive, the sidewalk. We have 37 feet from the back of the sidewalk to the fence on one side of the property, and it's 46.5 feet to the fence on the other side of the property. Here we have a photograph of the driveway. This is the creek passing under our driveway. This is the fence that we're talking about restoring, and beyond is our neighbor's solid brick wall, also about the same height. This is, of course, the creek as it looked today after the rainstorm. And someone mentioned about citizens having to maintain the public space between the sidewalk and their houses. This is what we have to maintain when we get a really big storm. We had to remove all of that. But we're happy to do it because we love living there. So in 1964, this Japanese garden was built in the front of the house, and you see it on the upper left, the lower left, and the lower right. And this was actually a kind of a nationwide response to Museum of Modern Arts building a Japanese house in their garden in, I think, 1958. And across America, suddenly Japanese gardens became really popular. And we think that was the genesis for this one. And of course, it had this fence, which gives it a visual closure, which is important in a Japanese garden. It also has this long horizontal window, though, that allows views out. And here's another view of the garden with the fence that marches up the hill. So fences like this on top of stone retaining walls are really typical in Japanese landscape architecture. Now, we offer two options. First of all, both options would build the fence to exactly the same dimension, not taller, etc. One would keep it just as opaque, not open, as the current one is, which are bundles of twigs all together, and they're very solid. The alternative, which might be more pleasing to the Public Space Committee, would be the same basic structure, but having wood pickets spaced equally apart so that it is 50% open and there is some sense of the space beyond. And of course, there's a 4-inch gap at the bottom, 12-inch gap at the top also. So that is essentially what we are requesting to the two waivers for. Are there any questions I could answer?
Mr. Chairman, shall I go ahead and introduce the resolution?
I think you should. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. Whereas the owner of 3005 Normstone Drive has filed a public space permit application to waive the 42-inch height fence limit to repair an existing front yard retaining wall topped with the Japanese style reed fence and to permit parking in front of the building restriction line. And whereas Normstone Drive is bordered by houses on one side and by woodland on the other side, and is a meandering narrow roadway that is not heavily trafficked. And whereas Normstone Drive has a prominent creek that is partly controlled with a series of roadway culverts, but also features culverts under driveways, as is the case at 3005, to control the creek's flow. And whereas the retaining wall at 3005 is a minimum 37 feet from the edge of the sidewalk and is another barrier to the creek that flows partly in front of it. And whereas the public space area where the wall and its accompanying fence are located is an unusual 170 feet wide, almost twice as wide as any other streets in the area. And whereas the property drops 30 feet from back to front and includes a story-high staircase on one side yard to reach the house's front door, and the other side yard is improved with an elaborate Japanese garden created in 1963. And whereas the existing driveway is accessed from Normstone Drive and extends approximately 68 feet from the edge of the sidewalk to the property line. Be it resolved that ANC3C finds the physical conditions at 3005 Normstone Drive unique and the decades-old improvements of the retaining wall and fence particularly suited to the site and the deep public space area. And thus, the commission has no objection to the waiver application. Be it resolved that ANC3C takes no position on the fence options proposed and has no objection to the parking waiver. Be it resolved that the chair and commissioners for 3C08 and 3C09 are authorized to represent the commission on this matter.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Reba. So, commissioners, discussion? Ms. Weinstein, could you, thank you. And so, commissioners, do you have any discussion on the resolution or any questions from Ms. Weinstein?
No, I'd just like to tell Ms. Weinstein to, thank her and her husband for taking care of that mess after every rainstorm. That's a big undertaking and a big expense at that, really.
Okay, hearing no discussion. Is there any discussion from the community regarding this? Okay, hearing none, let's move to a vote. Commissioners, all those in favor of the resolution as proposed by Commissioner McWood, please raise your hand. Turn your video on and raise your hand, please. And let's see. And are we missing Commissioner Fink? Yes, okay. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein and Mr. Escoff.
Okay, next up we have consideration of a BZA application for a use variance at 3801 Macomb Street. And do we have the applicant here?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Garcia Wilson. I'm from Sullivan and Barrows, and I'm the land use attorney for the project. I'm also here with Ada Yavalar from the ownership team and Adam Crane, the project architect.
Great. Why don't you go ahead and give us an overview of what you're doing, and if you need to present, whoever the host is can make you a co-host.
Great. I think Adam will be presenting our plans, but I'm happy to give a brief overview while he's pulling those up. So we are here tonight because we are seeking a Bza use variance. The property located at 3801 Macomb is currently an 8-unit apartment building. The building itself was built in the early 1900s, and we do have a certificate of occupancy. So it is currently a legal non-conforming 8-unit apartment building in the R1B zone. We are proposing to expand the building and specifically the size of the units. So in order to expand an existing non-conforming building, we need to seek use variance relief. We submitted a pretty detailed use variance argument to the record, but to summarize, the existing building has an odd unit layout. It needs a renovation, additional amenities. Again, we are not seeking to add units, just to increase the size of each existing unit in order to modernize the building and upgrade what is quite an old building. The proposed building footprint itself will meet all development standards of this zone and is limited to 40% lot occupancy. And again, the proposal is to add bedrooms and higher quality housing that will ultimately be more affordable than the alternative, which is essentially to demolish the building and replace it with single family homes. That's one of the matter of right options, is keeping these units as is not feasible, but a renovation is not possible without adding square footage. So without the relief, the matter of right alternative would result in a loss of units, units that have existed since the 70s for almost 50 years, and an overall less equitable and less viable solution than what is proposed. Before I turn it over to Adam, Ada, would you be able to briefly summarize your community outreach?
Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Ata Yavalar. My family has owned this building for probably, I would guess, around 40 years. My dad came here from Turkey and started doing real estate. So it's been with our family for a while. And I went to see if I could do a renovation and expand the units. But anyway, so on January 30th, on Sunday, I went out to approximately, I would say, 18 to 20 buildings in the area, knocked on the doors. A couple people opened the doors. Some people I spoke through a window because of COVID related concerns and everything like that. So I made them a package and explained to them what I was trying to do. I would probably say 85% of the people did not open the doors. There were a couple of Ring cameras there, so I just dropped it off. And then 2 weeks later, I went back and knocked on the doors again. Same people opened the doors, but some didn't. The same people didn't open the doors either. So I tried my best in that aspect. I did receive a couple phone calls because I left my phone number there and an email address for everyone to be able to speak to me and ask any questions they wanted to about the property. I did have some concerns about the property that hopefully I addressed for some neighbors, and then others, there was 2 others that were in favor, who also sent a letter of support for the project after I explained them the details. So we did, I went there twice to the neighbors and tried to do a neighborhood outreach. So that was my plan from there.
Great, thank you. Adam, do you want to go ahead and present?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Adam Crane, project architect with 2Plies. So I'll give you a project overview of the existing and proposed. This is the existing site plan showing the house kind of on the southeastern side, the corner of 38th and Macomb Street. A very large heritage tree right here, which would be preserved. There's a special tree back here, which we intend to remove. There's a shed towards the back, which intends to be raised. There's an existing alley that'll be used for parking access on the west side. Give you an overview where this is. This is kind of a heavily trafficked access to the garage of a very large commercial building. I think it's a Safeway or a Giant here, a grocery store. So this is an in and out drive there on the eastern side on 38th. So there's a pretty high amount of traffic there. Portions of the building go over the property line, and we'll be working with DDOT and public space for any modifications with that. Switching to the proposed plan, again, is that alley access. We're providing numerous parking spaces well in excess of what's required here. Keep maintaining the footprint of the existing structure and doing a large addition towards the back. The front will be dedicated on this side, 38th Street side, with the high traffic. So we'll be complying with the side yard requirements over on each side. This one is kind of an existing non-conforming that will remain. Basically what we're setting up here is a large addition with a courtyard in the middle. And I guess if you want to look at it as being subdivided, we've kind of got what you'd call maybe a townhome style unit, set up 3 here, and then another 3 here towards the front. And I'll take a look at a typical unit layout there. So again, as a general overview, this is an existing 8-unit rental, maintaining 8 units, but more or less we're doing large additions with a by right lot occupancy. And each of those units is becoming larger to become a rental project. Some conceptual 3D views that we have here. Again, this is the existing house towards the front. Existing porch to remain. There's some roof modifications that we proposed. And then you'll see that addition on the back where you can see some of these townhome-ish kind of stacked vertically designed units towards the back. That we set that up kind of to provide a sense of privacy vertically. So you don't have people in other units stomping on the floors and ceilings above you. Again, you can see that courtyard that I mentioned. We wanted to provide a good sense of light and air to all these units, and also kind of create a courtyard that encourages a sense of community between all the occupants, give them an outdoor amenity that they could all share. So kind of got a color-coded scheme here. Again, you can see all 8 units, general sizes of each unit. They're all, a couple of them are 5, most of them end up being 6 units. We are providing an amenity space for all units here on 2 levels. So Ada, as he intends to, I think, as he said, hold this until he dies or give this to his kids. You know, he wanted to provide a pretty high standard of living here. So, you know, we actually are scaling back on what we could provide for rentable space to the 8 units. And I believe he's looking to provide a fitness room, a shared office space or a workspace. I'm not sure that the use of that has been defined, but either way, it's a fair amount of square footage for all the units to enjoy. That too will have access to the courtyard, both by walking out and then with windows on the 2nd floor. All of these units, a typical unit layout here that I'm jumping to, most of these units will have roof deck access. So along with having shared amenities as an outdoor space in the courtyard, they'll also have their own private roof decks. Typical layout here, we're looking at one of those kind of townhouse blocks. Really kind of has two bedrooms on each level. You can see we've got ensuite bathrooms for the majority of them, large, generous living, dining, kitchen areas. Then there's a bit of a lounge space. So, you know, each of those 2 bedrooms on each floor can have a bit of a either a workspace or, you know, a small living space, or however it's intended to be used by the occupants. An overview of the units that are going into the existing house is a little more tetracede to make these fit. They're not as cleanly stacked as those, but you can see where there's various internal stairs that connect all of these to provide the 5 or 6 bedrooms that we're proposing. Just some elevations, kind of showing how this is going to look. You know, again, we've got that existing structure up front that's being modified, then the addition towards the rear that you can see with that courtyard kind of down the middle, visible from various views. Section drawing, really 3 levels over cellar, as is by right in this. We're not asking for any relief with heights, or there is no FAR requirement in this zone to adhere to. So it's really just lot occupancy and height, and we're complying with both of those. So happy to answer any questions or dive into any details that anyone in the community may have.
Thank you. Do we want to start with questions, or commissioners, do we want to hear the resolution and then go to questions? Commissioner McWood, which would you prefer, since you're presenting or Commissioner Boucher rather?
Actually, Commissioner Boucher is going to present it, but I would go to the resolution.
All right, let's hear
Okay.
it.
I hope this is the correct one. Sorry, I just pulled up on my phone. Okay. Should I read the whole thing, or do you want the final whereases?
Let's go with the whole thing.
Okay. Whereas the owner of a detached house, 3801 Macomb Street in an R1B zone, has filed with the DC Board of Zoning Adjustment for a use variance, and whereas the application requests extending and expanding a non-conforming use of the property, which is prohibited by zoning regulations without a variance. And whereas in 1975, a certificate of occupancy was issued to, I really apologize for mispronouncing the name, Huda Yabalar.
That's good.
The father of the current owner, Ada Yabalar. Sorry, thank you. To use the property for 8 apartments, and that permission is still in effect, creates the non-conforming use. And whereas in 2016, the DC zoning administrator met with Ada Yabalar to determine if the 16,000 plus square foot property could be legally subdivided, and the zoning administrator documented his finding that the property could be subdivided to permit 2 additional detached houses with 1 parking space each, in determination of zoning compliance letter dated February 29th, 2016. And whereas the current application seeks to demolish part of the existing house and construct an addition more than twice as large as the existing house for the non-conforming use. And whereas the application states the certificate of occupancy permission for 8 units would continue, albeit with a substantial increase in bedrooms for each unit, from a total of 12 bedrooms to a total of 46 bedrooms. And whereas the application states that 6 additional parking spaces would be provided for a total of 10 spaces to be located in a portion of the lot adjacent to a short public alley access from Macomb Street in compliance with zoning parking regulations. And whereas the DC zoning regulations state that additions to nonconformities must conform to the use standards, subsection C 201, and specifically that a non-conforming use cannot be extended in land area, gross floor area, or use intensity, subsection C 204.1, and that any addition shall be devoted to a conforming use, subsection C 204.3. And whereas the District of Columbia Court of Appeals has held that there is a higher bar to prove the need for a use variance than an area variance, and specifically that the burden is on the applicant to show with evidence that not granting the variance would result in exceptional and undue hardship upon the applicant. The court further held that a more profitable use or loss of economic advantage is not sufficient to constitute hardship, and the applicant must show that he cannot use the property for any purpose consistent with zoning that would provide a fair and reasonable return. Whereas the applicant states that it meets the court's 3-pronged test. 1, that the property is unique or has an extraordinary or exceptional situation. Applicant states that the 8-unit configuration, the odd layouts, the need for renovation, and the large lot satisfying this prong. 2, that undue hardship would result without a variance. Applicant states that adhering to the zoning regulations would not result in a fair and reasonable return on investment, and further, that renovating the house is not economically feasible, and that the relief requested is modest. 3, that the variance would not substantially affect the public good or impair the intent, purpose, and integrity of the zone plan. Applicant states that use is already as a multifamily building, and the proposal is only to update the building with an addition. Be it resolved that ANC3C does not support the variance request for the following reasons. 1, the applicant has not shown evidence of uniqueness or some exceptional or extraordinary situation. The property is large, but so are other lots in the neighborhood. The property is being used for residential use, and the odd layouts likely result from its original development as a single-family home, which is not unexpected. The need for renovation is consistent with older homes that have not been regularly maintained. 2, the applicant has not demonstrated with evidence exceptional and undue hardship resulting from not receiving a variance. The zoning administrator has found that the property could be subdivided, which would allow for lot sales or development of zoning compliant detached houses, which are selling at record prices in the neighborhood. A favorable real estate market exists in the neighborhood, and the applicant has not shown that he cannot use the property for any purpose consistent with zoning that would provide a fair and reasonable return. That the applicant might believe that he will profit more by greatly expanding the 8 units is not sufficient for a variance. 3, the applicant is not adequately assessing the impact on the neighborhood of this proposal. The scale of the addition is more than twice the size of the main house. It would extend far beyond the sides of the house and read as an apartment building. Most of the units would be in the addition rather than in the house that was subject of the certificate of occupancy. Each unit would have significantly more bedrooms and thus more occupants at the currently configured 8 units. While there is an R2 zone near this lot to the east, the blocks surrounding the lot are zoned R1B and are developed with single-family homes. That one apartment exists near the subject lot is not a reason to ignore the predominant uses that are consistent with zoning. The density of this proposal is not in modest scale, and it could be a precedent for redefining undue hardship. Be it resolved that ANC3C urges the Board of Zoning, BZA, to ask the zoning administrator for his opinion on the self-certification of zoning compliance and the assertion that there is no reasonable zoning compliant use for this property. We would also urge the BZA to consider asking DCRA's Building Code Compliance Division to assess whether the building meets code compliance standards for safety and health. Be it further resolved that the chair and commissioners representing 3C07 and 3C09 are authorized to represent the commission on this matter.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McWood. Thank you, Commissioner Boucher. Let's see. Why don't we open it up to the public to talk about the property? I know it's a very popular item this evening, so I ask that you use Ms. Sclafani, I see you, and I'm going to call on you first, but I ask that everybody else use the raise hand feature. If you go down to the bottom at the bar, you'll see reactions, and if you click that, you'll see a little raise hand button. For example, I'm now raising my hand, and Mr. Bentley is clapping. All right, so thank you. Okay, Ms. Sclafani, you want to kick us off?
Thank you very much, Chair Finley. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, great. I promised my neighbor, Rabbi, and his wife, who are neighbors, direct neighbors of the property in question here. So I promised him that I would read a brief statement of his into the record since you're recording tonight. And this is from my neighbor, Daniel Novick, to the commissioners. My name is Daniel Novick, and my wife and I purchased our first home at 3321 Idaho Avenue Northwest in December 2021. We are expecting our first child in June this year and have loved our new neighborhood and can't wait to build a family here. I recently received some notification about BZA case 20699-3801 Macomb Street. I understand that some neighbors may have been in touch with you about this and are planning to speak at the ANC public meeting tonight at 7:30 p.m. Unfortunately, my wife and I are unable to attend this meeting. We are both rabbis and quite busy during the Passover holiday. However, I wanted to send this quick message of support for my neighbor Francis Sclafani's comments. Admittedly, since I am new to home ownership and processes like these, I am emailing you and hope that this can be part of the discussion tonight. If there is any other manner to do this, please advise. Particularly, I want to add that my property is the one located at the end of the public alley that is discussed. I am concerned about many aspects of this BZA case that seem to lack transparency. I am concerned that the trash enclosure is located on my fence and certainly would not be suitable for 48 bedrooms worth of trash and would create a terrible and non-neighborhood-like environment for my new child and family. I am concerned with parking spot P10 and how it essentially makes utilizing my car parking spot on my property inaccessible. I am concerned about the proposed project density and what this would mean for our zoned residential neighborhood. My wife and I are not against a redevelopment of the property at 3801 Macomb. We are, however, against redevelopment and this particular proposal of it that would negatively impact our neighborhood, our family to be's ways of life, and our property. Again, the trash and parking areas directly on our property line would ultimately damage our fence and damage our land. We would not feel safe with our child playing outside in our neighborhood with a 48-bedroom room unit and alleyway entrance to it directly next to our property. The owner admits, even in a pre-hearing statement that was publicly published on April 13th, that there are other, quote, matter of right, unquote, options available that would work within the current zoning law. I echo my neighbor's comments that there is no undue hardship, in quotes, in this case, and would actually be causing lots of hardship on the neighbors of Idaho Avenue and Macomb Street, whose properties would be negatively impacted by this. I would now like to read my own statement.
Ms.
I
Sclafani,
believe-
is this the statement you emailed
That
us?
was my promise to read my neighbor's statement, the rabbi's statement. Now comes mine. Thank you very
Sounds
much,
good.
Chair Finley. I appreciate this. Let me just confirm for the record that I believe all of the commissioners received a copy of my email a letter to my own Commissioner Boucher and the photographs that I attached to it, as well as Mr. Yavalar's letter to the neighbors and other documentation that I attached to that letter. Chair Finley, did you receive that?
I believe I did. Thank you.
You're good. And have the other commissioners on board tonight received it also? Yes.
I
nodding.
circulated that
Okay.
to all the commissioners.
Based on that, I can make it a little briefer because you have already read my statement. I would just request, however, that for purposes of the recording of this meeting tonight, that everything that I sent be included as part of the record and be made a record of your hearing tonight. Chair Finley, would that be all right with you then, please?
We don't typically do that. We have draft minutes, but we could attach your email to our minutes, I think.
That would be great. If you
Is
could
that okay
attach
with you?
yes, that would be great. If you could attach my email as well as the 2 photographs and the other documentations in Mr. Yavalar's letter.
Certainly.
I just
attach
want
our
to,
minutes.
I want to briefly make these points with respect to that, to others who are on the call tonight. You know, during the presentation, it was constantly mentioned that they are calling the current house an apartment building. It is not an apartment building, it is a house. And I believe that other speakers here tonight from the community will address that particular issue and as to its legalities. But in essence, the current owner, and by the way, I knew the father. He was a friend of our family. Mr. Yavalar Sr. was a very fine man. He would not be doing this type of a application for his neighbors because of the detrimental effect it would have on us. So I just want to put that on the record. He was a very honorable man. He died a few years ago, and our family considered him a friend. With respect to the facts in this case, the alleyway is not as it is shown in the diagrams, and I made that point, and that's why I submitted the photograph to you. There, it is 11 feet and 4 inches of a cement public alleyway between my house and the property of Mr. Yavalar. It is physically impossible to have a parking space for a car or any vehicle to get in and out of a parking space that narrow without crashing into my property and into my kitchen window. That's the starters. The physical impossibility of what is projected on the diagrams. Also, there is a proposal of increasing 8 bedrooms under the guise of 8 units into 46 bedrooms. Who in District of Columbia or anywhere else in the nation have you seen an apartment with 6 bedrooms in it? Let's call it what it is. It's a dormitory. The density is what it is. You're seeing it from the diagram. And in fact, I attended the your own planning and zoning committee meeting on this, and there were no windows. And in fact, there are no windows that are put into the BZA application at all. It was only after actually one of the commissioners brought up the fact of where are the windows, that now they're appearing windows. This thing is like a concept that seems to be gaining additions as we speak. It's not well thought out. It doesn't belong in the neighborhood. It doesn't fit the zoning. Zoning would be destroyed here, and I'm going to leave it to other neighbors to discuss zoning and the other aspects of the legalities of it. But I can say this, and which has been brought out in the resolution itself, is the fact that zoning would be eliminated for what it would be. Let me say this also. There'd be a multiplicity of garbage pails. If you're here during garbage pickup day, which for us is the Thursday, there are garbage pails in this very, very short alley. You cannot fit, physically cannot fit more garbage pails for 48 people into our alleyway for pickup. Now, those may want to see more housing for people, but this isn't the place to do it. You can put this structure on a university campus. You can't put a dormitory on a residential block of single-family homes. I would just ask that that the resolution stating non-support for this particular application be approved. And we thank the commissioners who delved into this, and he'll put forth a very articulate resolution stating the facts in this case. I'm going to turn it over and make more time for neighbors who want to speak tonight, but you have my documentation. I thank you, Chair Finley, for making a part of this by putting the attachments and email that I sent you as part of the minutes in this case, and I thank you very much.
Of course. Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Eller. Mr. Eller, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Finley, for giving me the word. We live on 3315 Idaho Avenue, so the back side of our house opens towards the alleyway, which Francis already mentioned. And yeah, I want to say a few words in support of the resolution which was read and which we certainly support. We have grave concerns about the plans with the large extension of the existing structure. And well, I will zero in just on one aspect, which I feel is also needs consideration, and that's, the big parking lot, which will be accessed from our alley. One should note that the block we are on is somehow one of the most built up blocks in the neighborhood. There's the giant supermarket. Then on Idaho Avenue, there's a string of new townhouses. And then there are our houses, and then there's this building we are talking about. And there's very little, so to speak, non-paved surface on the block, much less than any other block in the neighborhood. And that's mainly due to the giant construction. But what raises the concern for us, the structure and the property 3801 Macomb lies higher than Idaho Avenue. So in case of a very strong rain or things like that, we would be concerned that a paved parking lot would somehow just get the water all into our backyards and then maybe into our houses. And with, climate change happening, we know there are more strong rains. So this is definitely a concern which needs to be addressed. And I would be very concerned if that much paving is happening on this property. Currently, there's the house, and otherwise there are cars parked there, but it's not paved. And that's actually, I think, quite good the way this is. So that's in some way one more concern. I will not repeat the things which have been said by Francis and what also our neighbor Daniel said. I certainly support them as well. Trash is, of course, also an issue. And I also want to make one more comment. Mr. Yavalar indeed communicated with us. He dropped a letter off, and I wrote him an email back with quite a bit of concerns, and I got just one line in return. And that was not exactly a communication what I had hoped for, but that's okay. He has probably many other things to do. But what I also have to say, we have been living here for 4 years, and my impression is somehow the property is not exactly managed by a model landlord. I will not share any pictures from the yard, but it doesn't look exactly inviting. And there were also sometimes some funny things going on there. I don't want to take more of your time there, but that also somehow influenced my decision not to want to support such a big construction. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Mr. Eller. Mr. Crump, ask you to unmute. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Finley. Thank Commissioner Finley and the commissioners and all the neighbors there. My wife and I are pretty much acquainted with that neighborhood. We like to go to some of the restaurants there that you have in the neighborhood. And the community has always been a nice community. Sometimes we'd even do shopping at the Old Giant, or we would go up to the restaurant that used to be called the Oyster. But we also have, when we look for parking, we've had to sometimes pull into that little alleyway and pull out, to change direction. The alleyway is not very wide. And a couple of concerns that I think you might want to think about, and it would be in favor of the resolution you drafted. A couple of concerns is the traffic, the construction traffic itself is going to take a toll on the roadway as well as the alleyway. And I believe there was recently, within the past week, some sort of Pepco emergency in that area, some sort of short circuit or fire. Now, those trucks are high. Any cranes that would be used to dig up the property during the construction would necessarily have a height. Those electrical wires are above ground, and they're not that high above the ground. And there was nothing in the application that said what, if anything, the owner of the property, the proposal that they made, were going to somehow make some accommodation there, because that could easily become a nuisance of types. And it could also, in good faith, while they're doing the work, if the power goes out, who pays for it? Who repairs it? If the lines have to be put under the ground in order to accommodate this construction, and I don't know that, but if they have to be put underground, there's a cost involved in that too, both to the contractor and maybe to the community in terms of inconvenience, shutting down of power or whatever, or negligence in how the power lines are changed. It seems to me it presents a problem that does not otherwise exist if you denied the variance. And that's the main thing that I just wanted to address to your ANC. I thank you for your time and the courtesy to let me speak.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes, I live across the street directly from this property. I'm the other corner. And I actually believe I'm in a bit of a unique position in that when we bought this home, my husband and I, from Fairleigh Sheehy's sons, many of you knew Fairleigh and her sons.
Yes.
When we bought the property from them, for quite a while, they had tenants living in the house. They rented out the house. And there were many, many repairs to be done. And that's an understatement, as many of you know who went by the house for so long. And recently, I've undertaken hundreds of thousands of dollars of repair on this property to bring it back to what Fairleigh would want it to be, which has been my intention all along, to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. And so for me, I'm a bit of a direct comparison. I could have easily bulldozed the back carriage house. I could have done extensive, I have a lot of extra property on my current lot, and I could have expanded easily and greatly expanded the value of my home. But I didn't do that. And I didn't do that because, first off, it's a mutual respect for the property and the neighborhood, which I love that Mrs. Weinstein took the great care to point out the Metropolitan Museum of Art's display on Japanese gardens. And yet when we see this picture, we see a home that was built around the turn of the century with some sort of addition that looks like it belongs in, I can't even imagine, perhaps a new Costco. Aesthetically, it's appalling to me. So, first off, to bastardize a piece of property, pardon my language, is upsetting because, in my own property right across the street, we drew the plans from the Library of Congress to bring this house back to what it was inside. And one particular note that Mr. Yavalar, your attorney, brought up in the beginning, which I'd love to have her speak to, is renovation without adding square footage is not possible. That line of logic is absurd to me. I just renovated an entire house of similar size and many similar issues, and I didn't add a single square foot to the property. So that line of logic, and I commend our commissioners for pointing out the many flaws in this logic, in this proposal, but I will say that not only from an aesthetic problem, I find it problematic, I find it duplicitous that there is commentary that the expanse needs to happen to increase. Let's call it what it is. It is a dormitory. It is a very haphazard use of a space to create townhomes in the middle of single family homes. And I have grave concern, as with the rest of my neighbors, that this changes zoning completely. I mean, this opens Pandora's box to every lot being redeveloped in different ways. And I want to firmly stand with my neighbors and say that in every respect, from aesthetic to legality to every issue I can muster, I oppose this. And thank our commissioners for crafting such a thoughtful, careful proposal to oppose this new Costco on Macomb Street.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Mr. Magdielli?
I will make a mental note not to ever follow my dear friend and neighbor, Luke, in any sort of presentation ever again. I live 2 doors down from this property, and I'm not going to, I don't think I need to expand or expound upon what our neighbors have said, and more importantly, the resolution that Commissioner Boucher has read, which for many reasons properly does not want this to go forward. But I would like to just expand on one point as somebody who is in the business and understands a little bit about zoning and housing compliance, that we would benefit, I think we as a neighborhood would benefit if the commission does follow through on having DCRA look into current housing code situations and potential violations, not hopefully drop that when this when we pass the recommendation on to BZA, because I think even just a casual glance at the property will show that there is multiple current issues that don't meet DCRA and basic business license rules and regulations. So yeah, I know there's one sub-point of many, many very good points made by the commission, but I would hope that we continue that thread and continue with that, maybe following up with the right officials within DCRA and housing compliance. Thank you.
Ms. Lavelle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Lavelle. I'm the owner of 3245 38th Street, so I see the property outside my front door, and my neighbors have said everything that I wanted to say far better than I would have, so thank you all. And I just want to go on record that I also support the resolution and do not support the variance.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bentley?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Edward Bentley, and I live in the building at 3725 Macomb, which is directly across 38th Street from the applicant's property. As an apartment dweller, I oppose this project just like the other adjacent neighbors do. One of the great attractions of this area is the present tapering manner of use. The block adjacent to Wisconsin Avenue is reserved for apartment buildings, but then there's a rapid transition off to a beautiful green, stable, lower density district. The present configuration of the subject property works very well for this purpose, and a more intense use was never intended and would damage the street. From a more practical perspective, parking problems will impact me personally. My building has no spaces. I have to park on the street, and it's already very difficult. Already a lot of traffic uses Macomb between Wisconsin and Massachusetts. It's not a large street. Cars usually have to wait to pass each other. This proposed project will have a parking lot that will be both an eyesore immediately adjacent to single-family homes, and which cannot be anywhere big enough for the 48 bedrooms they intend this project to have. And Francis is right, whoever heard of a 6-bedroom apartment? The edifice pictured in their application looks like the box a building came in. This proposal would extend a high-density use straight into a low-density neighborhood. Let there be no mistake, this is currently a large, gracious, single-family home. However it's maintained, that's what it is, built in around 1910. The architect just called it a house himself. In the 1970s, evidently a special exception was sought to turn the house, which it had been evidently a single-family home until that time, was sought to turn the house into a group home. This explains why that certificate of occupancy permits 8 units, because back then that was actually the limit for the special exception for that purpose. There was never any special exception in this zoning district for an apartment house whatsoever, however. And in fact, when they converted to tenants, they would have had to seek a variance. One wonders if they ever did. The owner actually admits in his application he is currently violating this law by keeping an illegal 9th unit. He should not be allowed to turn this illegal act to his own benefit. The owner is not entitled to a variance. To get this variance, he has to show exceptional and undue hardship. But there are no hardships here. There are none. He admits he can build 2 additional single-family houses on his property. This is what he's entitled to do under the zoning code, and he should stick to that. The whole thrust of this particular zone, the R1B zone, is to preserve its stable single-family nature. Zoning lines are drawn where they're drawn for a reason. The current lines accurately reflect where the boundaries are between different grades of development. These lines cannot be eroded around the edges, or ultimately they exist for no purpose. To finish off, I will simply state the applicant wishes to build a mausoleum that is truly out of keeping with the neighborhood. It will increase traffic, cause a trash nightmare, damage nearby homes, vastly increase impermeable surfaces, causing a dramatic increase in runoff, and damage the neighborhood's character. Under the zoning code, he cannot do so, and he's not entitled to a variance. He can absolutely make economic use of his property consistent with the present zoning, and should use the avenues open to him under the present zoning code. Let me emphasize the point that the whole neighborhood is totally against this proposal, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Garcia or Mr. Yavalar or Mr. Crane, do you wish to respond?
Hi, Alexandra Garcia Wilson. I wrote down some notes that I will respond to. I understand we have some opposition, obviously, so just a few notes. The building footprint itself is permitted by right. I did just want to point that out. This could technically be one giant single family home. So in terms of the building footprint itself, that is not violating any zoning. It is expanding the units that we need the variance for, the unit sizes. So I heard some comments about green space. We do have a pervious surface requirement. Adam might be able to talk more about that. In terms of hardship, it would be a hardship to lose a number of rental units that have existed since the 1970s. And then the zoning requirements, I know we were concerned about, there were concerns about the alley. There is the zoning requirement to only have 10 feet for access to an alley. And then I'll also turn it over to Adam and maybe he can talk about how construction would be managed on a lot. So I just wanted to respond to those points and provide some factual information.
Could you also, for the purpose of, I've seen the inside of the house, but could you just illuminate for some that are unaware of the way that the house is currently configured? Could you just explain what that is? Because that, I think that
Sure.
would be helpful.
I do have that written in our statement. So Adam, you might have that plan to pull up. But briefly, there are 4 one-bedroom units in the cellar. There's 1 4-bedroom unit on the first floor. There are 3 units on the second floor. 1 is a studio, 1 is a 1-bedroom, and then the other is a 2-bedroom. And then there's 1 unit on the 3rd floor. And the layout's odd in that this, second floor units don't even have kitchens.
Yeah, with the shared bathrooms and kitchens.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it's a bit of an odd layout as it is. I think it seemed like it happened kind of organically or was put together without too much forethought. I think Matthias or Mr. Eller mentioned stormwater or runoff. Projects of this size that disturb more than 5,000 square feet of land area require a stormwater management plan. So a civil engineer will be brought on pretty early on in the project as part of the required permit process. It's likely that the majority of the parking would end up being permeable pavers. But in the absence of that, any requirements would be met with an on-site stormwater management design. So that would alleviate that concern. I guess regarding any construction, and someone else mentioned, the power lines with access, kind of a means and method item there, I guess, with access, definitely something to consider. I don't think we have a plan in place for handling the power this early on. That'd be something we handle with the contractor at a later date.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to correct something that Ms. Wilson said. She said it would be a shame or something to lose the 8 units if the variance isn't granted, or if we don't support it and it's not granted. That is not the case. The 8 units are authorized by a certificate of occupancy that was signed in 1975. A certificate of occupancy is in perpetuity unless the building is raised. So this application is not about whether they can continue to have 8 units or not. It is about whether they can expand and build something that is twice the size of the current house, and do that in violation of the zoning code. That's why they need the variance, is because they're violating zoning.
May I clarify my point?
The 8 units are not, I had a conversation with the zoning administrator last week, as well as with the Office of Planning, and they both verified that the eight unit certificate of occupancy is not in question here.
May I clarify my point? I had heard, a number of comments that we could do single family homes by right. So that's what I was commenting on. That if one matter of right option is to eliminate that, it would be a shame to lose those units. That was my only point.
And can I also just add that, while we're talking about these 8 units and losing them, the owner and applicant does not have a legal business license that's valid at the moment for any unit on that property. You have to have a business license that's active and valid. Yours is not.
Yeah, so we had inspections done when we were going to renew the certificate of occupancy, and we scheduled that with DCRA to do a certificate of occupancy inspection because my dad passed away 2 years ago. So we had to renew that as well with the basic business license, and we're waiting to renew that certificate of occupancy, the older one from 1975, and do a walkthrough. We have had proactive inspections done, I believe, like a year and a half ago, where we do proactive inspections with the city with the basic business license. So we're in the process of doing that as well.
But you realize you have an expired license. You do not have a valid license to rent the property at this time, right?
Wait, it's not being rented completely. It's being rented to my worker's family that lives there as a single family. So I mean, we don't get any income from them or anything like that either.
Ata, I hear you.
Here, Finley, can we stop it back and forth?
Yes. Mr. Mangielli, Mr. Yavalar, could you hold on?
Sorry about that.
Thank you. I've got a question for the applicant. Why haven't you chosen to upzone from R1B to R2 and ask for a zoning amendment?
So the future land use map, well, R2 wouldn't be the proper zone. It'd have to be an RA zone, a residential apartment zone. So the future land use map has this area designated as low density residential. So the way that we could do that would be a comp plan amendment to change the future land use amendment the future land use map, and then get this specific piece of property upzoned to an apartment zone, like the one across to the east, I think.
Okay, what does the future land use map say for this particular parcel right now?
Sure, it's a residential low density. So that's like an R1B, R2, R3 zone.
Okay, thank you.
So it can't be rezoned. The appropriate pathway would have been to, and maybe they did, I don't know, would have been to go to the Office of Planning during the comprehensive plan amendment process and ask for a map change. That didn't happen. The Office of Planning didn't suggest to the council that this property should be changed in any way. Council didn't do it. So here we are. They are trying to use the certificate of occupancy to facilitate this huge addition and the building of basically an apartment house on this site.
Great, thank you. And fellow commissioners, any more questions for the applicant? Okay, I see a question from Mr. Frazier. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Just for the record, I did want to say that as the next door neighbor to this property, I'm not against single family homes going up on the property and seeing a proposal for that. I do want to go there and say I'm not opposed to that, and you're well within your rights, and I would be delighted. So I do want to go on the record as saying that. I did just want to get one more clarifying question, Ms. Garcia. It seems as if the line of logic for the loss of income, or the financial hardship, which seems to be almost the centerpiece of this discussion. I was curious financially. So in fact, I'm just curious, the only loss of financial or the financial hardship would be if you as the owners decide to stop using that single property. If you built 2 other units. So you could have hypothetically 3 single family homes on the property, or you could, to your words, develop the current house into one larger house, which there is precedence for that in our neighborhood. There's some very large homes that sell for astronomical amounts of money. So I'm curious, but is eliminating the single units, is that the sole source of the financial hardship?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of financial hardships in that eliminating units in an existing apartment building would eliminate an existing source of income. And then to renovate that apartment without expanding it, as you mentioned, in your own home, you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, something like that. I mean, so there are financial realities here. And maybe Ada can speak a little bit more about it, but this has been a rental property for his family for many, many years. And the intent is to keep this within the family as well. And sure, yes, we can eliminate this apartment building and construct 3 single-family homes. And I guess, you know, I don't know the market as well. You said sell them for astronomical rates. But I would argue that a loss of 5 units in this area is a hardship as well. And maybe not as monetary, but it is a hardship to lose rental units that have been here for 50 years.
Yeah, that was only my, I just wanted to clarify that elimination of those units was.
It's not purely financial. I mean, there's some other aspects to this too. It's just, you know, with the use variance, you tend to go towards the financial argument, and we're happy to submit more detailed financial information. I realize that could be something that could help as I've been listening tonight.
And circling back again, just for the record, all good with 3 single family. Would love to see it.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. So is this building currently subject to rent control? No? Okay. I was wondering because given it's 8 units and it was built before 1976. Okay, and let's see, so that ends my second question. All right, Mr. Ward, I believe you've got your hand up.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on the questions, Chair Finley, that you were asking about the consideration of a map amendment for this area. So it's low density residential. You said R2 would fit in there, which is a zone for semi-detached houses. And there are semi-detached houses, I'm sure non-conforming, that are on the opposite corner on 38th Street. In fact, several of them. I mean, it's an enormous lot. Could you not upzone this to R2 and put in a collection of 3 semi-detached houses, all of which would be available to have ADUs in them?
That's an option we could explore. We could probably even do R3, which would allow for row dwellings. And you have 2
is moderate density residential.
I think that could be considered, but I'll have to double check that. But yeah, that's one option.
Ms. Garcia Wilson, when are you going before BZA?
Let me check here.
I believe it's May 4th.
May 4th.
Okay.
If I can speak to that May 4th date, everyone, all of the neighbors that I have been in touch with me said that they never received notification of the BZA hearing set for May 4th. I myself never received one. I only found out about it because I went to the BZA website to find out what was going on with this case. Now, under the law,
I have to say, I didn't receive I've received a document in the last week, but I haven't received notification either.
And in fact, there is.
I don't send those.
We also, I
don't.
picked up the signage from the BZA offices and they told me to post it by tomorrow and take pictures and sign the affidavit. So it's going to be posted in the on the property on the 19th.
Yeah, but that doesn't fulfill the law. The law requires that the BZA by mail notifies each one of the owners within 200 feet of the property. And in fact, in the BZA file, if you go right to the website, there is a signed certification that such a mailing occurred to all of the owners within 200 feet back in February, and none of us received such notification. So this hearing set for May 4th is really not legally set. And we want to look into this. And I believe that the commission has a right to look into this too.
Thank you, Ms. Sclafani.
Ms. Garcia Wilson, do you want to respond to that?
Sure, we don't send those notifications. Those come from the Office of Zoning. We just provide the mailing label. So I think it would be something to check with the Office of Zoning.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Can we call the question?
Commissioners?
No, I would like to speak.
Okay.
If that's okay. Thank you. So I won't speak to the zoning law requirements or anything else. I'm an ANC commissioner, not my SMD, but I'm speaking for the greater good of the community. So someone mentioned that they had a photo of the place. I actually have some photos. I would like to share them because I think they're informative for framing the discussion we're having. So if it's okay, Chair Finley, I will share my screen.
Can you tell us the purpose of why you're sharing the photos?
I would like everyone to know what this property looks like right now. Is that okay?
Sure. I'm the ANC commissioner, and we've been hearing from the neighbors. So I am, the applicants also know what this looks like. So there's an ongoing discussion with the interested and most impacted parties. And I understand that you may or may not have a secondary resolution that neither us or the land use lawyers are aware of that you proposed today, which I want to state for the record is unwelcome and unfounded, seeing as this is not your SMD and there's been no communication regarding this property of any way, shape, or form with me or attempt to communicate with me.
Commissioner Boucher, I never mentioned anything about a resolution. I would literally just like to share a photo. I get to vote on this, right? So I hope that I'm allowed to comment on it, if that's okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Siddiqui, why don't you go ahead and share a photo?
Thank you. So I am sharing my screen. So just want to point out, this is what the property looks like right now. Can everyone see my full screen now? And I think.
Can you zoom in?
I unfortunately cannot hear. Let me actually, let's try and see if this works. This, Commissioner Boucher,
Yeah.
maybe you were right. I should not have, oh, there we go.
It's okay. This is fine.
Yeah. So I just want to show you all like what this property looks like right now, and what the state is, because I think that's important for us to frame what the discussion is right now. And I know neighbors alluded to it, so they were hesitant on sharing, but I just want to show everyone, like, it's on the corner over here. You can see there's a vast expanse of land over here, but you can also see right now inside there's a school bus, there's a boat.
The neighbor can clean it up.
I agree, and I appreciate if I'm not interrupted while I'm speaking. So it's you can see that right now, yes, neighbor can clean it up, it can be cleaned, but right now this property is in no condition at all. And if there is a danger to anything, I do think that right now the way the property is, it's pretty dangerous, right? Like, I think this is the way the property is right now should be of concern of what it is, and that should be worrisome to all the neighbors as well. That's the first thing I'll sort of, I'll comment on this, and then I want to comment on the options that we all have as a community to what to do with this. For the longest time, ever since I've been on the commission, even before that, we've always talked about how our neighborhood never builds multi-bedroom units. We all get criticized for building too many studios and 1-bedrooms. And and I'm always the person that's like, families can live in 1-bedrooms. My family lives in a 1-bedroom, and I'm very happy about it. But in this case, we actually have the opportunity to provide multi-bedroom units in a neighborhood where we've said that it can't happen. To me and my constituents, I think that level of housing for families that need it is incredibly, incredibly important. This includes the spectrum of families, right? Families who live with extended families, families with multiple kids, families who are now working from home. This is a broad array of people who can use it.
All due respect, before you joined the commission, there was a massive development.
Commissioner Boucher, may I finish?
Could you let Commissioner Siddiqui finish?
Thank you.
You don't represent this area. Shut up.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I'm bound.
Mr. Bentley, that's
inappropriate.
I'm
Wow,
sorry.
okay.
I apologize, and I will leave the discussion. I got a little hot there for a second.
I just asked to caution you because the neighbors are very involved and emotional about this property. So the more you're talking about our need.
Commissioner
to
Boucher, would
build-
you please let Commissioner Siddiqui
Hold on,
finish?
Miss Commissioner Finley, the more you're talking about the need for us to, as our moral duty and responsibility to build units, that's not what we're talking about right here. And you just stated that this is an unsafe property. So I think that if we address the issue at hand, that maybe this can revisit it.
Commissioner Boucher, are you finished?
May I continue?
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. So I disagree with you, Commissioner Boucher. I think, you know, there's a reason the whole commission votes on these things. It's because it's for the greater good of the community. And I think my comments in terms of how we need this type of housing is important. So that's my second thing. And then I think finally, the third thing I will frankly say is again, and I've said this before, I've been on this commission. I think of when my apartment building must have been being built. I mean, we didn't have Zoom at that time, but it has no parking over here. It brings in a lot of people. It brings in me. And I try and think of like, if someone was around then, would they allow it or would they not allow it? Are we really going to be inclusive in this neighborhood and allow housing of all types for people to be able to move in? Or are we really just going to say that we're going to stick with single family homes? I think we have an opportunity here. I would love to see, creative options for this site. I would love to see housing created on this site. I think this is a big lot and there's a lot of space. And then if we don't create this housing in this neighborhood, we're going to end up not being inclusive as a community. So I guess I'll stop right there and just end with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. Okay, Commissioner Pagets?
Yeah, so Lee Bryan, you can go first. Commissioner Reba, sorry.
I don't even know what to say after those comments. I'm wondering if I was watching the same presentation and listening to the same community feedback. I mean, we're talking about, your comments, Commissioner Siddiqui, were like we were listening and reviewing a totally different application. That's not what's going on here. And I'm just kind of surprised by your comments. And evaluation and understanding of this property, what's intended, and what the residents and adjacent neighbors are going through. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I look at this property and it already shows, sadly, what a poor landlord these individuals have been. It concerns me what the property would be turned into and how the new property would be maintained. I mean, there is no reason for anybody, regardless of how much space you have on your property, to have a school bus parked in clear view of traffic going in opposite directions. There's no reason for those fences and the yard to look so disheveled the way they do. I mean, if these owners really care about the community in which they live in, they would have maintained that property, beautified the landscape, and made it livable. Quite frankly, it looks like the whole place to me needs to be torn down because of the way it's been kept, or really unkept. So yes, if we were working with a developer who was looking at options at what this site could look like and what they could do, it would be a different story. But, other than Central Park West or East, I don't know any unit, even the Kennedy Warren, that has 6 bedrooms in their unit. This isn't New York City. This isn't Miami Beach. This isn't even Dubai. So one has to really evaluate and interpret what these 6-bedroom units would be going for. And the last thing I heard was affordable housing for our police, our school teachers who have families and extended families that need space. That wasn't part of the application, and that wasn't even mentioned in the presentation. So I don't know, maybe we were listening to 2 separate presentations and we're reviewing 2 separate applications. So I don't know. I agree. There's absolutely potential on this site. But sadly, the potential that you or I and others may be hoping for or wishing for or would like to see is not the case. I mean, really, even Stevie Wonder can see that.
Okay. Commissioner Packets?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to everybody for showing up and participating with your comments and stuff. And on that, I just want to mention that we as a commission, we each represent 2,000 residents. And there's 9 of us on this particular commission. Well, minus the 1 vacancy. But that is, you know, more than the 30 some people we have on this call right now, significantly. So there are many more, the majority of the community we do not hear from on these matters. And the oath of office that we take as commissioners is to the greater good of the District of Columbia and the residents of the district, the larger District of Columbia. It is not to the adjacent homeowners in a 200-foot radius of every single project that we take on. Yes, your views matter, but the greater good needs to be considered in all of this. And we are facing 3 very serious crises: climate change, housing, and social justice. And projects like this that allow existing units to stay in an area and make those units have even more bedrooms in them, which we constantly hear from our constituents is a demand in Ward 3 and throughout the district, that we want to see more multifamily with more units in, or more bedrooms in each unit. This project has the opportunity to provide that, and in a low profile manner in a high opportunity zone. You know, the walk score there is, it's incredibly walkable, it's accessible to transit. There's no relief being asked for the height or the density according to the lot size that's allowable under a single family home zoning. So this has the opportunity, because it's not dead yet, to solve a bit of the crises we're facing. And by not addressing them, they're only getting worse. So I understand your concerns about trash pickup, which is something that's absolutely mitigatable. Pervious parking can happen. There's no suggestion that the traffic would be 2-way in that alley. So you know, making up things and speculatively inducing unsafe items into a proposal.
There's no way.
Commissioner Boucher, could you please let
there's
your fellow
one
commissioners
lane.
finish?
There's no way that.
Additionally, concerns about parking on the public street in front of your house is not in any means, way, shape, or form a right. It is a privilege. Housing is a right. So I just wanted to hopefully have some folks think about that and think about the crises that we're facing, and also really think about what zoning laws were meant for when they were enacted in 1958. And the Housing and Zoning Code in DC says that the purpose of low density zoning is to protect single family home areas from invasion by diverse types of residential. That protection entrenches economic and racial segregation. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Packets. Commissioner Boucher, did you want to add anything? No, I'm going to ask you to unmute, Commissioner Boucher. No, you're muted. Nope, sorry. I hit the button to unmute you. Okay,
the reason that I couldn't unmute is because you muted me. So within these 2 blocks, we have different zones that completely embody everything that you just read. So I ask you, Commissioner Paggets, to go back and carefully look at the high density residential, the moderate density, the non-conforming uses, the semi-detached, the commercial district, the R1B, all within the same 2 blocks, which actually is the exact purpose that you are talking about to create that diversity. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Commissioner Finley, could I say something?
Of course, Commissioner McWood, and I hope then we can move to a vote.
Oh, I do too. So I'll be really brief. I think many of us on this call, particularly the ANC commissioners, care very deeply about affordable housing, and many of us work diligently to try to make that happen in Ward 3 and in particular, and also other parts of the city. But we are a city of laws, and and we are required as ANC commissioners to uphold the law. And it's important to understand the zoning code was completely rewritten in 2016. The comprehensive plan amendments reframed the comprehensive plan not more than a year ago. This site and what is allowed on this site has not changed. The other thing that I think is important to understand is the Court of Appeals case, the Palmer case from 1972, that establishes the framework for how use variances are going to be considered or must be considered from the standpoint of the Court of Appeals, states, and I'm only going to read 3 sentences. A use variance cannot be granted unless a situation arises where reasonable use cannot be made of the property in a manner consistent with the zoning regulations. An inability to put property to a more profitable use or loss of economic advantage is not sufficient to constitute hardship. It must be shown that the regulations preclude the use of the property in question for any purpose for which it is reasonably adapted. Can the premises be put to any conforming use with a fair and reasonable return arising out of the ownership thereof? This is not a case about affordable housing. This is a case about upholding the zoning regulations and the city plan. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Commissioner McWood. And are we ready to move to a vote? Okay. Hearing no alternatives, I will move to a vote. All commissioners in favor of the resolution as proposed by Commissioner Boucher and seconded by Commissioner McWood, please raise your hand, turn your screen video on and raise your hand and keep it up so I can make sure I get you. Okay. And all those opposed? And
hey, Bo, it's Jason. I call for a roll call vote.
Oh, okay, Jason. Thank you.
And Commissioner Fink, could you please explain if you've been here for this presentation?
I was on and off. Sorry, I wasn't feeling well, so I was dealing with some stuff, but I was listening. Thank you, Commissioner Boucher.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fink. Okay, Rachel, could you do the roll call honors?
Yes, give me 1 second to get myself in the spot. Okay. Commissioner Reba.
Yes.
Commissioner Fink.
Nay.
Commissioner Pagets.
No.
Commissioner Finley.
No.
Commissioner Siddiqui.
No.
Commissioner Hoyt is absent. Commissioner Boucher.
Yes.
And Commissioner McWood.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. So the resolution fails and the applicant does not have ANC support or disapproval for the application before BZA. Okay, moving on in our agenda. Thank you all for your participation, and for the most part, thank you for keeping it being polite. see, moving on. Sorry, I've got to pull up the agenda again. I believe that was the last part of our regular commission business. So we move to Secretary's report. Secretary Reba, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. I want to make sure that all commissioners had a chance to review the March 21st minutes. I know I sent them out late today. My apologies again publicly due to the Passover holidays and the Easter holidays. So did everybody get a chance to review? And if so, are there any last minute tweaks or adjustments that need to be made? I believe everybody's comments in SMD report all reflect accordingly, but I wanted to double check before I move the minutes.
There's just one thing, Commissioner Reba, in the SMD reports, 3C04, there's a mention of Cassandra Hetherington from the Cleveland Park Main Street. She seems to have the alley now named after her based on the minutes. And just wanted to clarify that update was provided by Cassandra and I was merely repeating it. The alley is not, at least yet, named after her.
Oh, okay. I thought we were honorably mentioning her due to all of her hard work and dedication, but
well,
I'm gonna respectfully log off. I need to do things for school tomorrow. And I just want to point out that Commissioner Fink joined for the vote and has subsequently left immediately after and was not present for the majority of the meeting. So thank you all. Goodbye. I'm sorry to my neighbors that we have failed you as an ANC tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Boucher. Yes,
Commissioner Finley, I will make that adjustment and recirculate. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I think we named something more than an alley after Cassandra.
All right. Thank you. With no other mentions, I'd like changes. I'd like to go ahead and move the March 21st, 2022 minutes of the ANC3C. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Are we Commissioner McWood? Are those opposed?
Abstain. I didn't get a chance to read them.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. So the motion passes. Thank you, Secretary Reba. And I believe we now move to Treasurer Siddiqui's report.
I sent you all by email the quarterly financial report for FY22 second quarter. I would like to move approval of the report.
Second.
Cool. I guess we vote.
Yes, we do indeed, Treasurer Siddiqui. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay. All those abstaining? The motion passes.
Commissioner Reba, may I ask why you voted against the report?
No, I voted for it. My hand must not have.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Reba. Yes, I only saw your hand as a nay. Thank you for clarifying.
No, sorry about that. I know it's been a touchy evening, but no, I wouldn't vote against the report. I reviewed it and all is okay.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it matters. It's just financial stuff. Just want to make sure.
Sorry about that. Gotta watch my hands. Okay.
And then just wanted to report expenditures for 4 items this month. Our Administrator Rachel Warsham's March 22 pay, which was $540.84. Virginia taxes on that pay, which was $47.09. DC unemployment insurance taxes, which was $113.77. And DC paid family leave taxes, which were $104.06. And that's it from the treasurer.
Okay, great. We'll now move on to S&D report. So Commissioner Reba, you want to start off?
Thank you. I just have 3 things. I'm going to need to engage our Ward 3 Mocher, Emir. There are still some Christmas trees in 3C01 that have been discarded and have not been picked up. So I will speak with him offline, but I wanted to mention this in this public forum, that the Christmas trees on Long Cathedral Avenue, east of Connecticut Avenue, will be addressed.
Hi, Commissioner. I'm actually still here.
Yes, sir.
If you want to send me some precise addresses, I can check them out tomorrow and get some pictures.
No, I appreciate that. And actually, it's in an odd spot. So it's been brought to my attention. I've made some 311 calls. I thought these were going to be addressed. They have not been addressed. I try to wait a certainly reasonable amount of time, but I will take pictures and I will send them to you if that's okay.
It makes everything easier. Yeah. If you send pictures and a precise address, that just.
Certainly. Thank you, sir. I've also received, number two, I've also received many complaints from residents who live along Cathedral Avenue, again, east of Connecticut Avenue, that there are a lot of out-of-state vehicles who park all day and are not getting ticketed. These cars just sit and there's no indication of who the cars belong to or if they are students. So I placed a call to 311, but the cars are still there and they sometimes maybe get rotated, but they're the same vehicles, same tags, just up and down Connecticut Avenue. So Amir, this may be something else I reach out to you regarding. And my third and last item is that I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the Washington Post this past Friday, but the National Zoo was featured in the Washington Post on Friday. They had a feature in the Metro section and also the cover feature story for the weekend section. The article itself mentioned the zoo's collaboration with neighborhood businesses and the community at large. So congratulations to the leadership of the National Zoo, as well as the Zoo Neighborhood Council. I think all of us are hoping that these articles this past weekend help drive customers to our neighborhood businesses. Much needed, much deserved. So anybody check out the Washington Post Weekender and the Metro section from this past weekend. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Reba. Let's see, Commissioner Pagets, you are next.
Sure. The resolution that we passed for the speed humps on the 2900 block of Cortland Place was accepted and put into the work order list. So looking forward for that happening somewhere between July and I believe they said September. So, but yeah, fruits of labor. So, and then there's a few other outstanding traffic safety investigations going on too that people keep reminding me of the same issue that hopefully will be wrapped up soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pagets. So the first thing I want to talk about is there's a couple people who keep parking in front of the former St. Arnold space on the sidewalk. And I call 311 every time I see it. I snap a photo and send it in. It's been a couple different vehicles. I don't know if it's the same owner. If you see something, if you see a car parked on the sidewalk, please call 311 and take a photo of the license plate so you can upload it. DPW, Department of Public Works, has been very good about ticketing so far, and hopefully whoever the person is who thinks the sidewalk is a suitable place to park will soon have enough tickets that they decide that perhaps it's not a financially great idea to continue to do so. Let's see the other.
Chairman Finley?
Yes.
For the record, did you want to share that Commissioner Finley left, so there is no report for 3C03?
Commissioner Fink, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, if you want to put that in the minutes, that is an accurate telling of what happened. So why not?
Okay. Thank you.
And I mean, we'll have to do the same for Commissioner Boucher. So the other thing I want to mention is that there's been some graffiti, anti-Mary Che, anti-Muriel Bowser graffiti on the New Jersey barrier at the south end of the service lane. I've reported it. I'm hoping it gets cleaned up. It's clearly the work of somebody who's a bit unhinged. Hopefully it'll stop. But yes, that's my update for that.
They actually turned that one barrier around So
Yeah,
you
they
can't
did.
read it. You can't read the entire message.
But then the person came back and spray painted again
Yeah.
to amend it. So, okay, thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui.
So my monthly thing of talking about Hearst Park and pool construction. So this time, after we've had a few rains, what the neighbors always thought was going to happen has happened. There's a waterlogged field. There's water collecting at different parts of the park as well as different corners. We've reached out to DGS, DPR, Councilmember White's staff. And so we're looking to get that resolved. Like with everything with this park and pool construction, it seems like it will never get resolved. The pool is supposed to open Memorial Day weekend, so we'll see how that goes there. But if anyone in the community has further follow-up, please keep sending it to me. Again, this is an election year, so council members, staff are unusually responsive this time. And so please do send stuff. This is the time to get stuff done and get stuff on people's emails. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because of the streetscape construction, the Porter Street was only one way going away from Connecticut. The street going towards Connecticut was closed. So cars were being diverted onto Ordway Street Northwest. Sometimes buses that weren't in service would also move there early on when that was happening. What's happened is that Ordway is not wide enough to accommodate two-way traffic and two-sided parking. And so we had lots of backup, but also very dangerous situation. Incredibly aggressive drivers who were honking at pedestrians, at other drivers. So we sent an email to Councilmember Che, and she was actually very, very responsive. So thank you, Councilmember Che. I see Abigail is here, so thank you, Abigail, to your staff for responding to that. And Director Lott also responded pretty quickly. So they've actually reopened Porter Street. So Porter Street is open again for two-way traffic now, temporarily, while they resolve some issues. And before they have to close it up again, they're going to find an alternate solution to having Ordway Street backed up. But yep, that's from 3C05.
Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. Commissioner McWood, you're up.
Pass.
Okay, so commissioners, we've come to the end of commission business for the evening. I do want to draw your attention to one thing. We have the Wardman Park development, and they would like to have us host a special meeting next week before the HPRB hearing on the 28th. I'm amenable to this and doing it. It would be a special meeting. This would be the only thing on our radar, and I would suggest the 26th. We barely have quorum right now, but would we have quorum then? Are there commissioners who are available for a special meeting on the 26th?
The 26th, though, at 7:30 after
7:30.
after the community engagement and grant meeting.
Yes,
So
yes,
there would be that meeting, we'd leave that Zoom meeting and go into another special meeting. So it would be two different links, two different notices, same night.
Yes, Commissioner Patty.
Different times.
Or the 27th, which just means we have to turn our resolution around to HPRB that evening or in the morning, which I don't think would be difficult.
Could we not do it next Monday?
Next Monday, I don't know if we'd have quorum. There is the Stonewall Democrats Forum that I cannot make.
Because I think having two meetings in one evening is too much, frankly. Would we be considering a resolution at this special meeting?
I believe we would. We also would be getting the updates from Carmel on their revisions based on what HPRB told them and what we told them before.
Right. Which you circulated already.
I did circulate, yes, and
so we've seen the revisions.
We've seen the revisions. Yes, they're minimal. Commissioners, are you available on the 26th after the grants committee meeting?
No.
No?
I'm not.
How about the 27th? Okay, so Carmel has indicated that they will be hosting their own meeting, inviting us to it if we do not host a special meeting, and probably claim to HPRB that we refuse to set up a meeting for them. But, that's...
Chair Finley, when did they come to us to ask because as far as I know, we weren't notified by them that they were going back to the HPRB and that they wanted to come back to us until after our agenda was publicly noticed.
Yes, Commissioner Fink and I were notified April 8th that they were going to, that they wanted to come back. And, you know, it was.
That never came to the rest of us.
No, they only emailed the two of us. And they emailed my Gmail address, not my ANC email. But my ANC Gmail, I should say. But we could have gotten them on this agenda if we had not had a miscommunication between myself and Commissioner Fink. And so unfortunately, we're not able to get them on this agenda, and thus with proper notice. And, you know, we had the discussion prior to the weekend about getting notice out for amending tonight's agenda to get them on board. But that would have been really unfair to the public, given that there's Easter and Passover and Ramadan going on, and folks might not be checking their emails.
There's Ramadan next week too, so I don't
Yeah.
see like how that's a justification for not having a meeting.
Well, it was more the notice, you know, if we send out notice on a Friday night, are folks going to be able to see it before Monday and plan accordingly? Okay. Commissioner Reba?
No, I was just going to say that, you know, it goes back to community input and how we, and what we do with that information. But the Woodley Park Community Association, the Wardman Towers, and the Shoreham North condominium, all the buildings surrounding this property and development have endorsed the application's proposal as is.
I did not realize WPCA had. Thank you.
Yeah, it was my understanding that yes, they have. And I actually, I don't know if anybody else has seen, but I did receive the emails and letters to HPRB from Wardman Towers, from Shoreham North, and I received the letter from Woodley Park Community Association right before this meeting, so I didn't get a chance to review it, but it looks like all are in favor of the application.
So is your recommendation that we not weigh in and have a special meeting?
No, I just don't, I don't know the purpose. No, I'm not saying that. I may be Carmel's choice to have this meeting to show the overwhelming support that they've been receiving. That's all.
Commissioner Reba, can you circulate? I've seen the Wardman Tower letter to the HPRB, but I haven't seen the others. Can you circulate those to the commission?
Well,
Get a chance.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll send you all three, actually.
Thank you, Commissioner Reba. Commissioner Pagets?
I think it's great that those groups all, you know, are supportive of it, but all those groups require membership fees and stuff. And it's like, that's not like the whole point of the ANC is it's like free for the public and all of the community participate and like have their voice heard. So I think that saying that is in lieu of or equal to the endorsement or not endorsement from the ANC is not equivalent or fair or equal.
No, I'm not saying that a meeting shouldn't be had. You know, in fact, there are some that are speaking against the ANC's decision for an additional 300 units. And I think that was the WPCA letter. So I'll send you the letters. I'm not saying it should preclude. I'm just saying that seems to be a lot of support that Carmel has developed. And it may be, I don't know. They may be bringing these individuals, these groups, these letters to that meeting. So everybody should be prepared. I guess that's my point, to see what this conversation is going to be and what direction it's going to be going in. So I'll send all the letters.
Okay, so I don't think we're going to, people seem reluctant to reach a decision this evening about the 26th or 27th. I guess we'll continue this over email. If we were going to do 26th, we need to get notice out tomorrow. If we're going to do the 27th, we need to get notice out Wednesday.
Yeah, the other thing everyone should understand is that I believe Chairman Finley, that if we don't pass another resolution, then our existing resolution is still effective.
Yes, but the HPRB already indicated that our prior resolution is not something they're really considering.
Well,
which
I don't think that's a surprise.
No, it's not a surprise. No.
No.
You're right. So
yeah.
Okay.
But I think I think it would be germane to our consideration of this is if we did have a special meeting, is the commission interested in looking at the changes that the Carmel has made, or would this and commenting on those, or would this just be another opportunity to pass a resolution that is not germane to the HPRB process?
I think there's probably appetite for commenting on the revisions. Yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I know I might be in the minority there.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we'll continue this over email over the course of tomorrow, and hopefully we can sort things out for whether we have a meeting. I hope we can, because one of the things HPRB asked Carmel to do is engage with the community, including the ANC, and that's us. So yeah, so I'll send that email around tomorrow. Is there any motion that anybody wants to move right now? Any particular?
Like to move to end the meeting?
Is that a motion to adjourn, Commissioner Siddiqui?
Motion to adjourn, please.
Okay. There's
Second.
Thank you.
Wait, there's a
All right.
hand up from a community member.
Oh, Mr.
Yeah.
Frazier? Great. You want to get a last word in before we?
Yes, and it's extremely important, if I may.
Sure.
I would like to officially have all the commissioners, I'd like to make this known that I would like that lot cleaned up for the safety of the residents that already live there. I live directly and see the children playing in that yard that is very dangerous. So we're talking about accessible and fair housing, which those units are currently below standard housing levels. It is in direct danger to the children that live in those units. And I can say that authoritatively looking out into that yard every day.
I believe Mr. Yalavar stated that DCRA is coming out, and so I think that will be.
Well, if that has been the case, then the
Commissioner Finley, we should, yeah.
No, Mr. Siddiqui, that's very
No,
disrespectful.
let me interrupt, because it's been a long night. I will commit to you. I will get in touch.
Thank you.
With the code compliance people and get an inspector out there.
I appreciate it. That's all I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. All right. Sounds like we're adjourning. Have a great night, everybody.